forward. But I believe that this is the right time to put it forward. Cultural, environmental, and digital policies can play a fundamental role in shaking away the inertia of the traditional politics that has secluded society from public life, generating a vacuum of critical political thinking and even producing cynicism, especially in governmental sectors. We have been working hard in Brazil to recreate a project of development based in our historical characteristics and in our cultural diversity. We have had promising results locally, and our timely actions show us that this strategy can create actions of genuine social generosity and bring back peaceful minds and souls. I know that I'm speaking in a town and a country, in a city, of course, that truly understands the importance of cultural diversity. This was why Canada and Brazil have had politically so close, had been politically so close in the implementation of UNESCO's Convention of Protection and Promotion of Cultural Diversity that we have been calling the Kyoto Culture Protocol. I know that I speak here to an audience that is very aware that cultural diversity is the source of a healthy self-identity for individuals, communities, and countries. This setting encourages me to propose a discussion of how to transform our cultural diversities into our most valuable heritage and propose a new model of economical and social development for the Americas. I believe that the Americas, in its vast continental extension, are an important, and I should say essential, place for political and cultural innovation and experimentation. A continent with many futures to build and invent. I believe that being American is a sentiment that has to be revitalized, not in one country, but as a characteristic of the whole continent, from Nunavut to Patagonia. A sentiment based on balancing political freedom with social equality, a sentiment capable of bringing hope and relevant transformation to the world. When I say America, I mean, of course, the entire American continent, but I cannot avoid discussing its relation to the United States and the political protagonism role that that country has played in the 20th century. I visit the US quite often. I keep meeting people there who express very clearly a necessity for major political changes. Most of these people, nevertheless, are very skeptical about their political future. I have expressed it to them that I see these demands for radical change emerge from many different sectors of society, especially through cyberspace, social networks, and the digital and internet communities, with whom I've been having promising dialogues. My feeling is that this totally peaceful unrest is a bottom-up issue happening everywhere, but with a special vitality in the American continent, which I see as a very positive sign of the rising of a non-governmental political movement that I see as a direct and matured result of the countercultural movements of the 60s. The counterculture. Oh. Oh, those times. What I have seen in the United States, as well as in Brazil and many countries, is that this political movement doesn't come from traditional politics. They are not dependent on the electoral process. On the contrary, they operate outside the electoral system and influence it to some degree. People are more and more eager to engage in politics in a new and proactive way. It seems to me that this collective unrest that can only be met by governments if they really understand the cultural diversity issues and its implications in the new model of development for the 21st century. In other words, we need and we have momentum for a cultural revolution. There can be societies economically more developed than others, but there are no cultures more developed than others. To consider one culture as more developed than another is a concept that has produced the logics of imperialistic societies, the logics of most wars of the world. Without the rehabilitation of our political life through and from cultural diversity, we will not be able to build a Pan-American society. Within that reasoning, I think that we have to start by respecting all forms of democracy on the continent, considering democracy itself in its many local political formats. So, I don't believe in generic forms of imposed democracies. Democracy should not be the measurement of any kind of hegemony. It would not be democratic if so. In Brazil, we have supporting the cultural practice of local social communities. We have understood that our role is not to bring culture to them, but strengthen their efforts and initiatives to invent and create their own. These social communities have built very consistent social technologies as innovative in relation to political parties as the iPod is to the old audio cassette. All over Brazil, local social communities are creating alternatives and proposing their own way of doing things in ways so innovative and interesting that we must take them into consideration in our policy-making decisions. It's simply stupid not to do so. What we have been doing in the Ministry of Culture in Brazil is trying to connect two technologies. The digital technology born in California's universities in the 60s with these thousands of local social technologies. The two. The social technologies naturally developed in Brazil by the peoples, the various peoples of Brazil, and the digital technology that's been developed by the academic community, the industrial community, the civil society, all together. We could say that we are nurturing, instigating global technologies. We created within the Ministry of Culture the Digital Culture Department, a department that brings to the government concepts and ideas from anarchic groups of activists within civil society, which acts in two fronts. The first front is to discuss all these issues with the government, with society, and with universities, both in Brazil and in the world, like we are doing here with McGill. The second front is to put into practice, through the Pontos de Cultura, the Cultural Hotspots Project, everything we discuss in theory.